excitement, I will open the 5th International Symposium, Italy in Transit. And this time we are online. This is a big difference, a big news. So first thing I will, for the people who are here, I will tell how to use Zoom, because I'm not sure everybody knows, at least we're not that good. Not everybody is. So this is our opening poster, Italy in Transit, 5th International Symposium, today and tomorrow. It's a virtual symposium, first time for us. And let me see. There. New times. So I'll tell you a little bit about Zoom rules and etiquette. The event is recorded, so in case it will remain online, all microphones should be muted all the time. So if a dog barks or a door opens, it's fine because we're used to that, and all the students have these kind of noises in the background, and we also have them, but it would be better not to disturb. If you want to see the audience, which is why we're doing this kind of Zoom, we're not doing a webinar, because maybe because we're Italian, we want to see the people we're talking to. We want to try to pretend this is in person. So if you want to see all the audience, go up on your screen, top right corner, and choose the video on gallery view. If not, you want only to see the speaker, you put speaker view, and that way you only see the person who's speaking large. We'll have sessions of Q&A after each session of our symposium, the first two tonight and then tomorrow. And what we'll do, you can write your questions in the chat box, which should be on your bottom screen, or you can also ask to unmute, you can raise a hand if you know how to do it. There are all these commands on Zoom. So we will try to be as smooth and natural as we can in this very strange, different environment. So after these first 2 minutes of rules, I will give the word to our dearest Miriam Ruthenberg, the founder of the Italian program, the reason why we are here tonight, and you are here tonight. Without her, we wouldn't be. And in fact, I forgot, I wanted to quote her, because one thing that she always says, instead of like Americans say, life gives us lemon and we make lemonade. This is a case when Zoom is going to bring us limoncello, life where Italians make limoncello, so even better. In the hard situation, we try to do even better. So thank you, Miriam. You're always our inspiration. And since she is the landlady here, I will ask her to take the word now. Miriam.
Thank you, Nadia. That's very generous of you. But the truth is that I have been here for 30 years, actually 35 years. It's not after we had the honor of hiring you and Emanuele back in 2007 that we really got going. And that was after, oh my goodness, it was so many years that I was pretty much by myself building this apartment complex. And this is now an apartment complex. This is no longer this little house that once stood. We were, Anthony Tamburi at the time in 2000 came to the rescue as department chair, and everything started actually rolling also from there. So this is a joint effort, this Italian Studies program, and I can say without blushing that this is a program that was constructed with the heart and with the mind. So we combine both our hearts and our minds in everything we do, in the way in which we teach, in the way in which we conduct our research. We bring our students and we bring the community as much as we possibly can into the fold. So that is something that I think is unique for our program. This evening is an evening that is very special because it's the 5th edition of an initiative that is entirely Ilaria Serra's idea. And Emanuele and Tamburi, the director of the Calandra Institute in New York City, they are the ones who are essentially putting this together. So I'm very honored that at least I can give an introduction every once in a while, peeking at the periphery. So thank you for that. I want to very, very much thank the people in the audience who are here. I see a lot of students. I see members from the community. I see community leaders. I see our Consul Cristiano Musillo. I see Maria Rosa Borghi, the Educational Director at the Italian Consulate. And I see Dr. Brett Danilovic, who is our provost. And of all the provosts we've had, I'm not getting any brownie points anymore, Brett, when I say this, but of all the provosts we've had, you have been the most supportive provosts of all things that even remotely deal with the humanities. So thank you so much for your staunch support. Very much appreciated. So I think I have said what I had to say, Ilaria, and I think I should turn the word back over to you.
So thank you, Miriam. Thank you very much. And we'll start with the opening. We will have the two institutional greetings by the Provost of Florida Atlantic University, Dr. Brett Danilowicz, and then from the Honorable Consul General of Italy in Miami, Cristiano Musillo. And I thank them both for being here. So Brett Danilowicz can start. Thank you very much for being here tonight.
Grazie, Ilaria. I really appreciate it. And along with the Honorable General Counsel Musillo, we welcome you to the fifth Italy in Transit Symposium. And I learned that there are attendees worldwide. I see in the chat, there's individuals joining us from Venice, but I also learned that we have colleagues, again, in different countries and different states. So I could say aloha to our colleagues that are joining from Hawaii. I could say vechumen to our colleague from Iceland, yet this is a worldwide conference in Italian. So benvenuti a tutti is, I think, much more appropriate to this group. I am personally delighted to welcome you to this symposium. It's the opportunity for cultural and collaborative exchanges, and they will be set in motion across many institutions by your discussions. Now, it is my responsibility as provost to tell you a few points of pride about Florida Atlantic University, just for those of you who may be new. So we are rated #1 in the United States, along with 5 other universities, for having the top public honors college. We are also #1 in the United States for educating people who are aged 55 and older. That applies to no one here, I'm sure, but it is something that we are proud of. And our business programs are ranked 59th in the world, which is very impressive. But most importantly of all, we have an extremely vibrant program in Italian. And I think that that's something that I know you all can be very proud of. So we are proud of all of these opportunities in which we engage our students and the public. So this symposium, you're celebrating Italy and the Italian influence on worldwide art and culture, politics and learning, and you're celebrating this with students, with faculty across institutions, with our community, and even citizens from many different nations. And in its own way, this symposium is helping our very complicated world feel a little bit more like a family. So thank you for your participation. And I would like to thank Miriam for getting this started. Certainly the faculty from our Department of Languages, Linguistics, and Comparative Literature, and the John D. Calandra Italian Family Institute for co-sponsoring this event. So I wish you a wonderful conference a distanza. Grazie.
Thank you. You can see all the clapping going around here. Silence clapping. We have to get used to that. Thank you for your language use. That was very nice. And now the Honorable Consul Cristiano Musillo. Thank you very much also for being here tonight.
Thank you, Ilaria. Thank you, Professor Serra, for introducing me. Benvenuti a tutti. It's a great pleasure for me to come back, even though virtually, to Florida Atlantic University for the opening of this annual international symposium. And it is also an honor and a privilege to meet, even though virtually again, Dr. Danilovic, whom I'd like to thank for the continued support that FAU demonstrates towards the enhancement of Italian culture and language among its community. Allow me to emphasize how, since its inception, Italy in Transit has become, thanks to FAU and to its collaboration with the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute in New York, a place where many professional and academic representatives coming from all over the world have found a way, and I'm quoting from your leaflet, to share their interest and research about Italy, seen as a fluid space, far from fixed and rigid stereotypes, where identity cross paths and new encounters are negotiated and shaped. And this is particularly true this year, during which we celebrate the 160 years of diplomatic relation between Italy and the United States. This symposium is able to nourish the long-lasting relation between our two countries with new lifeblood. And even during the pandemic, culture never stopped, never, to spread its message of hope and resilience. All testimonials, ideas, and collaboration featured by Italy in Transit do share the connection to the Italian culture, to its fascinating nature for scholars as well as for students, and to its role of bridging the differences. The important role played by FAU in providing Italian courses from graduate to doctoral level is even more impressive if we consider our languages taught. The multidisciplinary approach in use embraces not just language and literature, but also cinema, science, and creative writing. This is a holistic approach which dates back to the Renaissance workshops and is revitalized by the innate yearning to innovate in teaching and learning processes. In conclusion, this two-day symposium is a unique occasion to cherish the year-long efforts made by all the faculty and at large the FAU as a whole in promotion a virtual or in-person agora, a square of meeting and sharing able to trigger a restart from the pandemic, a way, let me say, to build back and to build back better. Buon lavoro a tutti. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We do need this kind of hope and energy. Thank you. It means a lot to all of us. In fact, one of our speakers tomorrow, I can tell you now, is sick with COVID, but will be able to be present anyway. So we are trying to go against all odds. So thank you very much, Consul. Thank you very much, Provost. And I would now share again so we can see what is coming ahead. We have two meetings tonight. One is at 5:30, Italians Far and Beyond. The Michele di Serra New Italian Film Series, chaired by me, and Emanuele will help me to translate with the translation, because we have filmmaker Marco Bonfanti and Anna Godano, his producer, with us, and I can see them already present. They are connected from Rome. And then the keynote conversation will be kept by Anthony Tamburri of the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute, who was trying to connect. I hope he's here now. He is in New York, and he will have a conversation, a keynote conversation instead of a keynote address with Stanislao Pugliese of Hofstra University, who just published a very important collection of Italian American encyclopedia, the Italian American history. Then tonight we'll have the virtual reception, which is an experiment. You will see what happens. We see if it works. If not, we tried it. We will do breakout rooms and chat a little bit with whoever wants to remain. And we will also have a musical entertainment by Barbara Salani with a very new song that she composed, and we're trying to learn to honor our Miriam Ruthenberg in her big concert we're preparing for April 19th with the entire Italian program here at the university. And this is tonight at 7:30. Then a quicker overview. Tomorrow morning, we have the first session. We have guests from Italy, the class from Legnano. It's a whole session dedicated to Italian students of high school. So we have a high school from Boca Raton, and we're very proud to say this is our graduate, Marianna De Tollis, who is the teacher, and she will bring her students to speak about Italian explorers. The whole theme of this Italy in Transit is explorations, going beyond, going against all odds. And then the class from Milan will speak about the language of Italian Americans. They do a study on the Italian of Brooklyn, and they will speak in English while they're Italian. Instead, our English American students will speak in Italian, because the third session will be Serena De Candido, our good friend and teacher at Somerset Academy, who will speak about Ilaria Capua with her students. So it's all students presenting, but presenting very important themes. And Ilaria Capua herself, who is at the University of Florida and is an important virologist that now is almost every day on Italian TV, will come and address any questions and speak to the students and give a good example of somebody who goes beyond, who is at the forefront of research and science. At 10 a.m. We'll have a more literature and university level session with our students presenting the Italian poetic geography, which is a very interesting new idea we had here at FAU. It means not just study geography, not just study poetry, but go around in the map of Italy looking for the metaphors, the poetic metaphors that we can see physically in the streets of Italy. So we'll use Google Earth and we'll introduce this new concept. With us, there will be Stanislao De Marsanic, very important representative from Italy of I Parchi Letterari, who will converse with the students. Giovanni Corona will be presented by Simona Cigliana of the University of La Sapienza in Rome. He is a poet from Sardinia, very interesting poet. And then we'll have Magda Novelli Pearson, our colleague from Florida International University, speak about this new project. It's called COIL, C-O-I-L, Collaborative Online International Learning, which brings together different universities of the United States. So another very interesting session. At 11:30 a.m., not p.m., this is a little mistake, there will have the Mario Mignone session in Italian American first. This is interesting because this is our first virtual conference, and we'll have more first to talk about. We'll have the new Strade Dorate, the Osservatorio di Cultura Italoamericana, that is being created with Milan, Valentina De Cesare. We have Audra, who is our student, and Domenica, who will speak about this other two first. The first Italian American Film Festival we had, and we're going to have again in April, and the first virtual exhibit of Tom Di Salvo, our painter and friend. And then we will have the daughter of Andrea Camilleri, the author of Montalbano, the series of Montalbano series and the movies, who will come and speak with Manuela Filomena, another one of our PhD students, on new unpublished documents that prove the friendship between Andrea Camilleri and Jerry Mangione, an important Italian novelist and memorialist. And then obviously you can choose. You can come to one time or the other. It's easy as clicking a link. So whatever you're doing, you can choose the session you want to follow. But after all this session, there will be an interactive moment of Q&A where really we'll try to be together and speak together as if we were in PA 101 in our room here at FAU. And in the afternoon, the whole idea again was to take Zoom beyond. So we are going to do the first World Summit of Italians in Transit. And we will connect with a professor from Hawaii, Honolulu, Gianpietro, who is recovering from COVID from Brazil, Gretar, who is a new friend from Iceland, and Corrado Passi, another new friend, a writer, very established writer from Cape Town, South Africa. And then we'll have Barbara Martelli, a colleague who works at the University of Auckland in New Zealand, who will speak about the Kiwis, the Italian Kiwis in New Zealand. Will you believe we are everywhere? And then, this is my punchline, we'll have another friend, Emanuele Jones, who's working to bring men to Mars. So we're really going beyond. And Emanuele is working for SpaceX, the mission created by Elon Musk, the creator of Tesla. And he will speak to us from Seattle, where he is working to bring internet to Mars. So we're really going beyond, really, really going beyond. And at 3 o'clock, we'll try to do the session across 24 time zones and have everybody connected. And you can ask questions in New Zealand, in not Mars, but Seattle, in South Africa, in Brazil, and everywhere. So this is our program, and I hope you will enjoy it. I'm already enjoying it just by telling it. Yes, I've been thinking about it for a long time. So
Ilaria, it's 5:27, so I don't know if anyone wants to take a glass of water or something and to be ready for our friends from Italy.
Did you say water?
No, whiskey, a glass of wine. So if you want to take, sorry, Miriam,
It's aperitivo time.
If you want to take a glass of wine, in a couple of minutes we can start to introduce Anna and Marco. So let's start at 5:30, right, Ilaria?
Yes, we were thinking, since it's virtual, we probably have to get up and have some little breaks. So it's fine, but we have to start. We start at the right time when we said we would start. And so if we finish earlier, it's fine, we can get up. But in the meantime, since it's only 2 minutes, I see that Tony Phillips is inviting everybody to the luncheon to honor Dr. Miriam Rittenberg on March 24th, Wednesday at 11:30. So we are all invited and we'll be happy to go and celebrate our 35 years at FAU.
Not long enough.
Okay. Here we are.
Nice.
Okay, this is our first session. So it's dedicated to my father. His name is Michele di Serra, Michele Domenico Serra, and Miriam Ruthenberg and some other colleagues have helped me to create this series after he passed in 2018. So for the last 3 years, we have done what he would do if he were here with me. And I know he is here with me because I'm doing this. So when he was younger, For 25 years, he created the Premio Città di Venezia, who brought filmmakers from third world countries, from the countries that usually don't take a big part of the Venice Film Festival, the International Film Festival. And he would organize a day for them, and he would pay for their trip to come to Venice and stay not at the Grand Hotel in more modest spaces, but where they could participate and be part of the catalog of the film festival, the International Film Festival of Venice. So it was a big deal for them, and it really meant a lot. He was also a collaborator. In this picture, you see us in Gallio, because Gallio is a small town in the north of Italy, in the Asiago plateau, where they make the Asiago cheese. And in Gallio, there is also this amazing little film festival dedicated not to the established filmmakers, but to the young ones, to the ones that need to prove themselves, and often are the more eager to come and to speak and to be with their audience. So again, in collaborations with the Gallio Film Festival, delle Opere Prime, we have invited, we're very proud that he accepted to come virtually, Marco Bonfanti and his producer, Anna Godano. So the idea of this festival, this symposium, was really going beyond, was trying to use Zoom, since we have to use Zoom, to make something new, to propose something new, and not to mope about what we are forced to use. So in fact, it's full of potentials, and we see it now. So Marco Bonfanti's movies have always this kind of theme, and therefore he presented his first movie at the Gallio Film Festival. Perfect. And he is also an inspiration for us to imagine how we can dream, how we can go beyond. That's why I contacted him, and Marco very nicely accepted to come. Grazie mille, Marco.
Eccomi. Grazie a voi. Thank you very much. I'm very happy to stay here with you. And but it's impossible for me to speak in a good work, and so I have two fantastic translators, two saints, and and she's Anna Godano, my fiancée, my inspiration, and she speaks better than me the English, and so she's here with me. Thank you very much.
Perfect. No, it was very good. Hi, Hannah. Would you want to say hello to everyone? Oh, it's Godano.
Having a... Sorry?
It's Godano, not Godano.
Yes, Godano, but it's okay. It's not so important. So thank you for having us. Thank you very much.
No, thank you. So how we do now? We are going to, I will introduce Marco's work with a few highlights on his work. And I know that many of you have seen already his most famous film, which is L'uomo senza gravità. And our students have watched it. They were enthusiastic about it, really enthusiastic. I see Richard and Callie saying hello, and saying yes, and Isabella saying yes. So we have questions for you, and we will open it to everybody. But before that, we also will show one of your short movies, Tubiolo e la Luna. So speaking of our guest tonight, this is his first movie, L'ultimo. First of all, I have to say that the Wikipedia entry for Marco is so interesting. I think I would like to have something like that. It says, born in Milan in 1980, young, 41. After making 2 short films, he led a herd of more than 700 sheep through Piazza del Duomo in Milan. I want something like this. After 2 movies, he brought the sheep to Milan. Fantastic. Okay, so this is what he did, and this is why I invited him to be the first of our speakers. It's perfect. So if you see here, we have 2012, 700 sheep arrived in Milan for his movie. And this is the protagonist of his movie, a real shepherd. So one thing we'll speak, when we speak about Marco, is magical realism. We have this very realistic, real person, a shepherd, the last shepherd, who works in Milan, who had his dream. And his dream was to bring the sheep to the children of the city who have never seen a sheep. So that's what he did, a dream that worked. And then I'm telling this, so if you have any questions in the second part, you can ask, and we have Marco here who will tell us about it. So, okay. Then 2016, this is another of his movie, Bozzetto non troppo, another dreamer. Bruno Bozzetto is the famous creator of Signor Rossi, many cartoons, many movies with a very funny spirit, very humorous, and he also is real and imagination, magical realism here too. Here you see him with his creation. And this is also a very interesting work you did, Marco, because you used him and you brought him into his cartoons. And one more thing about him that struck me is that his dream is to fly. He always dreamt woke up in the night thinking about flying. So maybe this is a link that we will ask you about. And his big work, you can find it on Netflix. We have sent the link out. It's free on Netflix. L'uomo senza gravità, the man without gravity. An excellent example of magical realism, Italian style. I have to thank our student Odra for telling me about this movie because she said, why don't we show it to the students of 1120? And it's perfect because the way these characters speak, it's perfect for our young students, the one that don't know much, because it's spoken really well. So we used it in our classes, and here we have the poster. And in our conversations, we were always wondering about the meaning of lightness and the meaning of weight. So this is something to remember for our conversation in a few minutes. Here you see the lightness aspect of the movie and this incredible story that is told with very realistic style. As you can see, we have this poor countryside in Milan, around Milan, and this very gritty photography on the other hand. So we have imagination and reality together. And in the same movie, we have the aspect instead of weight, of the peso di vivere, the weight of life, or the weight of what? We have been asking this in class, and we have many different interpretations. So I would love to speak about this later. And here we have him with his backpack, and here with the weight of his love, the love of his life. So a very positive weight. And before we speak about all this, this is the movie we're going to show now. It's only 10 minutes. And it's also a very interesting creation. Marco was offered to go inside the Istituto Luce Cinecittà, this fascist institution. Fascist, it was created during fascism time for propaganda, obviously, and find whatever he wanted. Plunge his hands in the archives and start splicing and editing and making new movies out of old material. The idea is beautiful already. And his proposal is one of the best ones, I think. There were 9 filmmakers that were asked to go. Yes, Anna says yes, thank you. And all of them made a 10-minute movie. So now here you see also the symbol, the image of our poster. And I'm curious to know where it comes from. Marco, then you tell me where it comes from. This is my big curiosity. Who had this movie in the Luce archive?
It's a fantascientific, no, sci-fi movie of, I think that 1920 in Germany.
Oh. I thought it was Italian.
Very strange movie, like, I don't know, Méliès. You know, Méliès is the same, but in Germany.
Perfect. So you understood me. Bravo.
Thank you.
You understood the question and you answered. Very good. Okay, so next step, we're going to watch the movie. Is there anything you want the audience to know before we watch the movie, Marco?
No, sì, adesso partiamo con le traduzioni, però ti do il tempo, non ti preoccupare. In realtà mi hanno dato la possibilità di utilizzare il materiale d'archivio come meglio volevo, come dicevi tu.
So he was given the possibility to use any material and use it the way he wanted.
E il papà di Anna mi ha raccontato la storia di questo uomo nel sud Italia che soffiava dentro un tubicino convinto di spostare le nuvole.
So Anna's dad today, who is Father's Day, told him about this story of a little boy who wanted to make the clouds fly away with a little stick by flying inside a little stick, un tubino, tubiolo, since that's the name comes from there.
Yes, tubiolo and the moon because he's obsessed about the moon, è ossessionato dalla luna, e come vedrete.
Non fare spoiler,
no
spoiler.
Ok.
No spoiler.
E ho costruito, è stato difficile perché in realtà per costruire il personaggio di Trubiolo abbiamo usato 350 immagini diverse.
Wow, to create this character, they used 350 different images.
E alla fine spero, insomma, che abbia una coerenza, perché noi volevamo creare un personaggio come se fosse esistito davvero.
And he wanted to create this coherent character as if it really existed. And that's why he uses these documentary images.
It's a fairy tale, but it speaks about the story, a brief story of Italy. Insomma, guardatelo perché sennò vi svelo troppo, insomma, ne parliamo troppo dopo.
Yeah, in fact, so we'll watch it because he doesn't want to spoil it for us. But what I also can say, just watch for the two storylines. There are two storylines. One is the voiceover and one the fairy tale, and the other one is the material in the images. So thank you. I will share now with sound, optimize for video clip, and go to Vimeo. It's a public, you can watch it again if you want.
C'era una volta, tanto tanto tempo fa, in un paesino lontano lontano, un bambino che tutti chiamavano Tubiolo. Tubiolo non era il suo vero nome, era chiamato così perché soffiava sempre in un tubicino e credeva di poter spostare le nuvole. Ma il papà non era molto d'accordo. «Devi lavorare, Tubiolo, c'è da lavorare la terra!» E Tubiolo, con zappa e con vanga, aiutava la sua famiglia nel faticoso lavoro. Ma la domenica, quando il lavoro era finito, Tubiolo giocava con gli altri bambini e raccontava loro i suoi sogni. Un giorno, con questo aeroplano, andrò nello spazio. Tubiolo cresceva e al paese ormai tutti sapevano del suo sogno. Il lavoro però occupava gran parte della giornata e mai nessuno aveva tempo di fermarsi a parlare con lui. E anche Tubiolo a volte era tanta la fatica che era stanco persino di sognare. Però, se trovava degli strani oggetti sul terreno, li usava per guardare lontano. La vita nel paesino intanto continuava tranquilla. Finché un bel giorno arrivò una strana scatola e Tubiolo per la prima volta rivide lì dentro quello che aveva sempre sognato da bambino, in uno strano uomo con la tuta bianca. In quella strana scatola gli parlò: un giorno noi andremo sulla luna. E così a cena Tubiolo trovò finalmente il coraggio e disse: voglio studiare da astronauta. Il nonno rispose: va bene, dai, faremo sacrifici, va bene. La mamma andò a vendere i suoi gioielli per raccogliere i soldi che servivano a far studiare Tubiolo, mentre la nonna gli preparò qualcosa per il viaggio. Lo salutò. Ciao Tubiolo. E lui partì. Appena arrivato, fu subito colpito dalla bellezza della città e dai suoi tanti rumori. L'università era davvero grandissima e piena di ragazzi come lui. Tubiolo poteva finalmente dedicarsi solo a quello che amava davvero. Intanto però i suoi compagni manifestavano per le strade. Ma a Tubiolo interessava solo guardare dal telescopio per vedere il cielo e perdersi con i suoi pensieri fra le stelle, le costellazioni e la luna. La vita in università continuava e a Tubiolo piaceva molto studiare. Finché un giorno un suo amico lo fermò e gli disse: guarda Tubiolo, stasera andranno sulla luna. Incredibile! E fu un grande evento per tutti.
Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We
Al suo migliore amico Tubiolo disse: Costruirò un telescopio e riuscirò a vederla quella bandiera sulla Luna. Lascia perdere, Tubiolo, ti prenderanno tutti in giro. Ma no, io voglio vederla. La voce però si sparse presto e tutti cominciarono a prenderlo in giro. Io ho detto a Tubiolo, mettiti dalla parte giusta, se no non la vedi. Ma Tubiolo non si perse d'animo e partì. Andò in una città dove gli dissero che c'era tanto lavoro. Entrò in fabbrica dove avrebbe trovato i soldi per il suo telescopio e trovò anche una piccola sistemazione. Tubiolo era sempre puntuale e lavorava molto bene. A volte però, distratto dal rumore delle macchine, si perdeva nei suoi sogni. Quando tornerò al paese farò un telescopio enorme. Allora sì che vedrò la bandiera sulla Luna. Così diceva, e la voce non tardò a spargersi fra i suoi colleghi, che svelti cominciarono a ridere di lui. Tubiolo aveva però finalmente raccolto tutti i suoi soldi. Era quasi Natale ed andò in banca a prendere il denaro che gli serviva. Ma quel giorno non fu fortunato. Tutti accorsero a salutarlo, perché sapevano che grande perdita fosse stata per l'umanità la scomparsa di un sognatore come lui. Al paese dove era nato, lo spirito di Tubiolo continua a vivere nelle storie della sua gente. Da allora ai bambini si racconta la fiaba di Tubiolo e della luna, che ogni inverno, in quella notte di dicembre, illumina con la sua luce solo la casa di Tubiolo, per ringraziare quel sognatore che l'aveva tanto amata. Adesso, Marco, è ora di andare a dormire. La fiaba è finita.
Eccoci. Altro applauso virtuale. Sì. Bello. E poi che bella voce che c'ha Anna. Anna
Sì,
ha such a
veramente.
nice voice.
Sì.
Thank you. Thank you.
Ethan has already a question, and that's very good that you have it because it's important. Non ho capito. What happened at the bank? Was it a bomb? It was.
Yes, the bomb is a bomb about Piazza Fontana, Fontana's place, and is a bank, a famous bank in Milan, that the terrorism,
A terroristic act.
a terroristic act without the guilty. I don't know why.
Oh.
And quante persone sono morte? And
100, quante persone morirono, ma parecchie, è stato un attentato.
Una strage.
Yes, a big attack.
È stata una delle grandi stragi in Italia, forse Augusto Cavallini può dire qualcosa di più preciso. Augusto, la strage di Piazza Fontana.
Strage di Piazza Fontana. Sent shockwaves to Italy and the world.
È stata una cosa tragica. Ci sono stati 84 morti,
84.
non so quanti feriti. Ancora oggi non c'è una risposta definitiva sui responsabili. Sono stati indicati alcuni soggetti, qualcuno è morto, qualcuno ancora c'è, ma è stata una pagina nera della nostra Repubblica.
Uno dei grandi segreti di Stato. Proprio ieri la 7 ha fatto uno speciale.
Sorry, Pietro, let's talk in English.
Okay.
Right.
Just yesterday is one of the big mystery of Italy. There has been a period of the terrorism in Italy between the 60s and the 80s, and a lot of unexpected accident and bombs and blow up of airplane and the boat in Leghorn, and the one in Bologna, the one of Piazza Fontana was one of the biggest mystery. Somebody say that it was connected to the mafia, somebody to the Brigate Rosse, somebody say that it was part of the P2. Anyway, one of the big mystery of an Italian in the second, coming back from the Second World War. It was the Italy of the Reconstruction, was the Italy of the, come si può dire?
It was 1969, it was already the boom, but Augusto Cavallini, maybe Marco, you were asking why he was answered, because Augusto is a corazziere. He was is a corazziere, so he knows about the history of our
can you hear me?
But Marco, yeah, was saying...
Because the idea, parlo in italiano, l'idea era raccontare che in quell'attacco sicuramente un sogno era morto, uno dei tanti sogni.
So the idea was to tell that in the particular attack, one dream was dead. One dream had died, one of the many.
Purtroppo quando ci sono questi avvenimenti muoiono i sogni, oltre alle persone, perché ogni persona si porta dietro un sogno.
When these things happen, not only the people die, but also the dreams of the people, because every person has a dream inside.
E quindi volevo raccontare soprattutto questo, insomma, questo personaggio fragile, ingenuo, innocente,
He wanted
trova in un gioco più grande di lui.
He wanted to tell the story of this character that is fragile, young, innocent, and was stuck in a game that was bigger than he was.
E in questo modo, in quegli anni, questo è l'aspetto storico, sono stati portati via tanti sogni, secondo me, al nostro paese, negli anni di piombo.
So during those years that are called the years of lead, anni di piombo, because of the terrorism, many dreams of our nations have been killed.
E quello è stato il momento in cui poi sono subentrati i famosi anni '80, che sono stati gli anni del disimpegno, effettivamente.
And after that period, the 1980s started, which were the years of
engagement.
Disengagement. Grazie. Anthony Tamburi is here too. Thank you very much.
Just a couple of things. As Maria Rosa Borghi is underlined, in Piazza Fontana, 17 people died and 88 were wounded, while in Bologna they were 85. Yes, yeah. And Linda is anticipating some questions that that we were thinking of asking. Thank you, Linda. Was Tubiolo a real person? How did you make the film? Was that archival footage? I don't know how to pronounce that footage. And very well done.
No, he's not a real person, but is only my imagination. Ok. E quindi in realtà, come dicevo prima, ho ricostruito questo personaggio sommando tutto questo materiale d'archivio di propaganda, poi di fatto perché lui c'è propaganda fascista.
Sorry, I have to translate. It was, yes, he was using all this material that was from the Istituto Luce, which was part of the fascist propaganda.
So if I can,
yes, Professor Tamburri from New York, and he will speak later, but I think he has a question.
So I guess what Bonfanti did, which I find excellent, and that is to introduce the beginning of the second Ventennio Nero, and that is Gli anni di piombo, using footage from the first Ventennio Nero. Now, I don't know if that was the purpose here, but it stuck out.
Yes, absolutely.
To me, because Piazza Fontana is in fact the beginning of that Ventennio Nero, which we must also say that, you know, there was a gentleman before who said we don't know who did it, etc. And it's true, but we also know that certain people were sort of held in prison for many years, who in the end were innocent, and one or two people fell out of windows and things of that sort. And I'm thinking of Valpreda, for example, who was locked up for many years. Yeah. Anyway.
Pinelli.
Bravo.
Pinelli.
And Pinelli, right, Pinelli, exactly, who fell out of a window.
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know what happened. My internet froze. Regarding what Pietro was saying, during the late 60s, during the 70s, also part of the 80s, Italy was involved in a so-called strategy of detention. And there was a lot of terrorist actions from the right, from the left, also from mafia. There is all kind of connection in order to destabilize the country. This was the main purpose. I can tell you that from 1970 to 1974, I was an Italian resident security and so-called corazzieri, well-known, let's say, regiment of the Carabinieri. And one of the things that we always lived those days was always the day something can happen, because we did not see who was, but they saw us. And every time the president was going out, there was very high tension. And thank God that was overcome. Today is a different country. But yes, it's been a terrible moment, and there are a number of, let's say, killings and mass killings, airplane accident, there's still train accident, bomb inside train. They still need an explanation. Hopefully one day we will discover what's up. But what is good about this story is that the country overcome. And 2 days ago, we celebrated 160 years of Italian unification.
Diplomacy.
It's been a big achievement.
Yes, I wonder, Marco, if it happens very many times when you you show this movie, that people remember that time and they are so saddened about it, about the memory, like Augusto is in this moment. Succede spesso che la gente ricorda, li colpisci per questa scena della banca.
Yes. Una cosa alla quale tenevo molto era anche, insomma, la questione dell'immigrazione, perché parla anche dell'immigrazione dal sud al nord, di questa gente che in realtà andava al nord a cercare fortuna, poi si ritrovava invece in una situazione che probabilmente era anche peggio da quella da cui partiva poi.
So he's saying that there's also the fact of the theme of internal migration, the people that went from the south to the north, which was a big wave, and found a situation that was even worse than what they had left. This is another theme in this movie.
E poi mi piaceva raccontare la Luna perché la Luna è stata, io non ero ancora nato, però è stata veramente un sogno per tutti.
The moon was a dream for everybody, even if he hadn't been born, he knows that. And in fact, there is a question by from Ida, that is about the moon and going to the moon. Yes, Marco?
No, e quindi in realtà mi piaceva questa idea che come sempre questi personaggi che ci piace raccontare in realtà sono dei personaggi che mantengono una loro dignità nonostante siano presi in giro o trattati male dagli altri. Questa è una cosa che mi piace sempre raccontare, insomma.
This is an important theme in his characters. They always maintain their dignity, even if they are teased and if people discriminate against them. And this is, I have to say, one of the aspects that our students loved about the movie. È una cosa che piaceva moltissimo agli studenti, il fatto che anche Oscar, per esempio.
Tutti i nostri film in realtà raccontano di personaggi che sono considerati dalla società degli ultimi, poi in qualche modo il pastore, no? Il pastore è questa figura antica che è fuori dalla società, no?
So even the shepherd is this ancient figure outside society that is one of these marginal characters.
E mi piace sempre raccontare che invece questi personaggi forse contengono qualcosa di maggiore rispetto agli eroi, insomma, quelli che oggi vengono considerati degli eroi, che hanno forse una voglia di vivere maggiore rispetto a quelli che oggi sono considerati invece i nostri totem mediatici, insomma, quei personaggi che la società contemporanea segue.
Yeah, and these sometimes are even more superheroes than the other heroes that society recognizes. So these are the true heroes, according to Marco.
Ilaria, scusa, vedo il professor Pugliese ha una domanda o un'osservazione sugli anni di piombo.
Yes. I just wanted to make a comment a couple minutes late, but I don't want to have the impression remain that during the Anni di Piombo, left-wing terrorism and right-wing terrorism were the same. It's important to keep in mind and remember something. Left-wing terrorism usually targeted individuals, whereas right-wing terrorism, like the bombing at the station in Bologna and in Piazza Fontana, were indiscriminate acts of terrorism that aimed at mass killings of innocent people. And that's what led to the so-called strategy of tension, which supposedly would create a demand for a fascist coup d'etat. So I just wanted to make that comment because it's very important that we don't make a false equivalence between the two types of terrorism. I mean, they were both terrorism, but they were two very different kinds of terrorism. That's all.
Exactly. Yeah, they were both terrorism that had tied with our government. The biggest question in Italy for 30, 40, 50 years, from the Anni di Piombo until probably 10, 15 years ago, and maybe not even now, is that there is a really strong connection between the mafia, the brigate, the terrorists, and the government, at least until some of the key people have been in our government or passed by with this mystery of this big tragedy. So the end of a dream that Marco Bonfanti has been showing in the movie was also in the people of the fact that sometimes you can't overpower what is above you or what you don't really know of this connection between the people in the government and the terrorist or the mafia, because many times, or the P2 or the mystery of Italy.
Okay, I wonder if this was really the topic in Marco's movie, though. I don't think this was the topic. They didn't want to speak about Anni di Piombo, probably only, right? It doesn't seem to me. In fact, the first time when we watched it with our students, that was part of history that happened, but it didn't seem to us like the most important thing. I don't know.
I'm saying what was in the people that were in Italy by that time.
Yeah.
Another thing that has been touched by Marco Bonfanti of this transmigration from the south to the north is another big dilemma that have been in Italy and now is not there anymore, and is a little bit like in the States, that the theme of the racism. Here is more between black and whites, Black Lives Matter, and Martin Luther King, and the power and Obama. In Italy has been a lot north versus south. The people that in the 60s and the 70s used to go from the south to the north and were not always treated well. I think there has been part of this, and also the good part, the good tradition that people had from the south and brought in the north and melted in the north and made Italy a great nation. So it's the good and the bad.
Marco is underlined, sta spiegando ancora che importante per lui era questo tema dell'immigrazione interna.
I just wanted to add my proverbial 2 cents. I would like to steer the attention actually back to Marco Bonfanti's beautiful film that he created. Just fragments of existing film. He took something that apparently had little value for some people and back together into something very unique that to me was poetry. So what you did with just fragments of film it moved me. It moved me to pieces. It's very beautiful, very, very, very special, very unique. And the poetry was also in the quality of the narrator's voice and in the original soundtrack that we used as well. So those 3 elements together, the power of your camera, the power of your mind to make this little jewel of a film, the power of the voice, the power of the music. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That was a jewel, un gioiello.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Miriam, you're right, it's true. I see also a thumb up from Arlene, and Linda was saying to me, this film is a representation of the potential of the whole country, dreamers, artists, and creators. And you are one of them.
As our student, Richard Leon, agrees, I like that students are participating. Maybe they have some questions. I don't know. We have prepared some questions, but still the conversation is very interesting. So if you want to ask or just make observations, please.
I just want to say that the image of the movie of Tubiolo was beautiful because Istituto Luce, the cinematographer of the Istituto Luce during the fascism was really, really great. So the images are beautiful, but the difficult for Marco, and I think if you see all the movies of the 10, you can see that in an easy to talk about something that is a fairy tale with this type of images that are really, really strong, because when you see a man in Milan, it's difficult to think about a fairy tale, and I think it's really this is the best part of the poetic work of Marco. The possibility to see the image shoot during the fascism with this type of eyes, and think about I don't know, like if you are a child, it's really a fairy tale, and this was really, really difficult. The use of the music, the soundtrack, and everything.
I have a question regarding this. Did you go in with an idea for a movie, or did you let the image inspire you? Because it must have been una confusione di materiale totale. Come hai fatto a cercare proprio queste immagini? Mi immagino deve essere stato anche un po' overwhelmed.
No, io ho scritto una sceneggiatura e ho chiesto agli assistenti alla regia di mandarmi, cioè ho scritto proprio dei pezzetti, ho scritto ho bisogno di una televisione su un cavallo, e loro si sono messi a cercare la televisione sul cavallo.
Ecco, questo spiega poi. Ok, mi chiedevo infatti.
Ilaria, there are a few questions.
Richard, do you want to unmute? Do you want to say it yourself?
Il mio cane my dog is loud next to me, so maybe just answer with the chat. She keeps on trying to bark. Sorry.
Okay.
But I love the film very much. It was very interesting, and my dog's name is Luna. Also, she's the one next to me making the noise. Yeah, we're both listening. Thank you.
Your dog is happy because it see Tubiolo e la Luna, I think.
Exactamente. Sì, she heard it.
But the question that Richard has in the chat of come ha filmato il volare in L'uomo senza gravità. Penso che il film sia bellissimo. How did you feel? How did you film the flying scenes?
Yes. È stato, in realtà c'è stata una grande preparazione. Siamo arrivati sul set molto preparati perché poi i ritmi del set sono molto veloci.
So there was a very ready preparation because the rhythm and the sets are very, very quick.
E quindi ogni volta avevo scritto degli storyboard, avevo disegnato degli storyboard.
So he drew the storyboards and then he would go to the set.
In modo da ricostruire la scena allo stesso modo con gli stunt e con i responsabili degli effetti speciali.
So he used stunts and the special effects people, yes.
Anche perché gli interni del film sono tutti ricostruiti a Cinecittà.
The inside of the movies, the inside parts are always reconstructed in Cinecittà, in the Italian Hollywood city.
Esatto. E quindi in realtà abbiamo avuto la possibilità di avere dei soffitti da 40 metri, perché sennò non riuscivamo con i cavi, con tutti i macchinari.
So that's why he could do the picking up this man and making him fly, because the ceilings were 40 meters high.
E abbiamo utilizzato un braccio meccanico di cui esistono solo 3 esemplari in tutto il mondo.
So they use this mechanical arm that only 3 examples of it exist in the whole world.
Esatto, uno è stato usato per Gravity.
One was used for Gravity, the movie.
In Los Angeles. Uno è per Harry Potter ed è a Londra.
Wow, one for Harry Potter in London and one for Marco.
E uno in Italia per L'uomo senza gravità.
And one for Marco for The Man Without Gravity.
Okay,
and Elio Giordano must have had a lot of fun. Did he have fun? Just a quick question.
The first time, the second and the third, and it ain't easy to fly.
There are several questions from our students, for example, from Kali, I see students, also from Marlene, from Manuela, our PhD student, and then from Giada Biasetti, who is actually a professor of Spanish at Augusta University in Georgia, and she's a scholar of magic realism, and indeed her question is about magic realism. So we have several students, Ilaria. Let's go.
Okay, I'll go in order. I go with Calli. Posso fare la mia domanda? My question is, and you can read it maybe.
Salve.
Vai Calli, you can do it.
La mia domanda per lei è, per quanto riguarda L'uomo senza gravità, perché Agatha diventa una prostituta come carriera? L'ha fatto apposta?
Why Agatha, the female character, becomes a prostitute at the end? Is it done on purpose?
In The Man Without Gravity.
The Man Without Gravity.
Ma in realtà l'idea era che mi piaceva l'idea che anche in questo caso quella società che normalmente nell'idea comune è considerata la società un po' sordida, un po' la società degli ultimi, diciamo così.
So that was the society of the last ones, the lowest ones, the lowest level of society.
che è un po', cioè si vede che è considerata nel pensiero collettivo anche un po' sporca come idea.
What people generally think it's dirty, a dirty place.
In realtà avesse molta umanità dentro, cioè c'è una donna che parla del figlio che gli vuole fare il regalo, come a voler dire per l'ennesima volta che quelli che consideriamo gli ultimi in realtà probabilmente hanno qualcosa da insegnarci, insomma.
Instead, even in this dirty environment, or what we think is dirty, there were very touching moments of humanity. The mother who was speaking about her child and what gift to give. And this goes with his main idea that even in this kind of, in this society, the last ones are the ones, or the smallest people are the ones that have more to teach about society.
Nel caso di Agatha, in realtà, io non lo dico apertamente, però lei è andata incontro a un fallimento, si capisce quando è bambina.
So in the case of Agatha, she goes towards a failure, because when she was young, she was dreaming to become la Carrà, no? Raffaella Carrà.
Yes, a famous diva, però non riesce in questo intento e in realtà trova il suo divismo in quello che fa. È un sogno distorto di fatto il suo, da cui lui cerca di salvarla, perché lui ci è passato davvero in quel sogno e quel sogno in realtà l'ha fatto stare male.
So he actually had passed through that dream of fame, and that made him even sicker. He didn't come out well from fame, and so he is the one who saves her in that moment. Okay.
Question from Manuela Filomena, our PhD student.
Manuela, quanto è durata la fase di montaggio? How long was the editing? Manuela is a film student.
Many time. Very long. 6 months. 6 months.
Wow.
Okay. And here is the Professor Biasetti's question about magical realism. You can read it. I translated in Italian. First of all, complimenti per il bellissimo film. Ho una domanda riguardo l'uso del realismo magico e volevo chiedere a Marco Bonfanti cosa lo ha ispirato ad usare questa tecnica nei suoi film e se ha familiarità con il realismo magico latinoamericano. Come ti ho detto, la professoressa Biasetti ad Augusta University insegna proprio il suo campo di studio e di lavoro il realismo magico latinoamericano.
Allora, in realtà tutti i film che ho fatto sono imperniati di realismo magico, proprio tutti quanti, e spero di riuscire ad andare avanti, insomma, di inserire questa corrente poi di fatto artistica.
So this is all these movies are magical realism, and he hopes to go ahead in this kind of trend.
E sicuramente Marquez, ad esempio Marquez, ma anche Borges, ma anche Cortázar, e poi Italo Calvino in Italia, insomma, sono stati una grande ispirazione per me.
So he's been inspired by Borges, Marquez, Cortázar and Calvino in Italy.
Però volevo dire una cosa che è una cosa secondo me molto interessante, ovvero Marquez ha ammesso, Gabriel García Márquez ha ammesso di aver creato il realismo magico dopo essere stato allievo di Cesare Zavattini.
Okay, Marquez admitted that he had created magical realism after being a pupil of Cesare Zavattini.
Perché Marquez è stato a Roma al Centro Sperimentale di Cinematografia alla scuola e aveva Zavattini come professore.
Because Marquez was in Rome at the Center for Cinema and Zavattini was his professor.
E quindi quando lui ha creato Cent'anni di solitudine si è ispirato a Miracolo di Milano, questo l'ha dichiarato lui, quindi.
When he created 100 Years of Solitude, he was inspired by Miracolo a Milano. I'm happy because this was my idea in a presentation I gave to a conference. I said Totò il buono è tornato, and I'm so happy this is true. I didn't know that. Bene, bene.
E quindi in realtà il realismo magico secondo me dà una grande possibilità, cioè riesce a raccontare la realtà ma attraverso un espediente che è un espediente artistico.
So he keeps explaining reality but through an artistic expedient or tool.
Perché io dico sempre questa cosa, se noi tutti quanti ci svegliamo la mattina, apriamo la finestra, quella che vediamo è la realtà che percepiamo noi.
If every morning we wake up and we open the window, the reality we see is the reality that we perceive.
Ma quando noi apriamo quella finestra la mattina non stiamo facendo arte.
But when we open that window in the morning, we're not doing art.
Per arrivare alla verità non basta la realtà, che purtroppo invece è un momento storico in cui la realtà è predominante.
To arrive to reality, reality is not enough, even if in this moment reality seems to be predominant.
E credo che anche gli psicologismi dei film che ci sono oggi, un po' ottocenteschi, penso ad esempio a tutto il filone supereroistico, in realtà di immaginazione ce n'è gran poca.
And he thinks that even in these superhero movies that are going so much now, there's not a lot of imagination.
C'è un copione da seguire che si ripete all'infinito, sempre uguale.
There is a copione, a screenplay that is infinitely the same one. Mm-hmm.
E questo che cosa fa? Sì, fa sì che la gente non si aspetti più niente di strano.
So people don't expect anything strange anymore.
E ho come la sensazione che questo porti al conformismo del pensiero.
And this may bring to the conformism of thought. So everybody will think the same way.
E il conformismo in realtà è l'anticamera della dittatura, possiamo dire, comunque di un potere che, mediatico
sì,
che ti può dominare in qualche modo, che non ti permette di andare oltre.
And conformism is just the antechamber of dictatorship, a power that doesn't allow you to see beyond.
E oggi io credo che l'immaginazione sia in crisi, questo lo penso davvero.
I think that imagination is in crisis today.
E l'immaginazione in realtà porta alla libertà.
Well, imagination brings liberty, freedom.
Diceva Einstein che con la matematica si può andare da A a B, ma con l'immaginazione si può andare da A all'infinito.
Einstein said that with mathematics you can go from A to B, but with imagination you can go from A to infinite.
E quindi che cosa significa? Significa che oggi con questa crisi dell'immaginazione pensiamo a una cosa che poi è partita dall'America, Seattle, il 68.
So let's think about it, the example of 1968, which started from Seattle in the States.
Il 68 aveva uno slogan che era l'immaginazione al potere.
And the slogan was imagination in power to the power to imagination.
Perché con l'immaginazione effettivamente si possono sovvertire le regole. Se tu puoi immaginare, tu puoi cambiare.
Because with imagination you can change the rules. If you can imagine, you can also change.
Ma se non ti permettono di immaginare, cioè ti danno appunto il cibo precotto, io lo chiamo, però diciamo ti danno il copione infinito sempre identico, in realtà in qualche modo ti stanno spegnendo la libertà.
But if they don't allow you to imagine, they are killing your freedom. Oh, okay.
Il realismo magico e liberatorio.
And this is why magical realism is a liberation. It's a liberation. So big question, Giada, and big answer here. We have 11 other questions and very few minutes. Shall we go through them? So we have Angela and Isabella that are asking how the idea of the man without gravity came about. Did you already know the story? And is Oscar yourself? Are you a little bit of Oscar? That's Isabella and Angela. Rosie, the same, how you started the idea?
No, because I am a complicated man and Oscar is a pure man, is a fragile man. I mean, not fragile, purtroppo, devo dire la verità. E, no, l'idea mi è venuta camminando con Anna un giorno.
Oh, okay. The idea came when he was walking with Anna one day.
E quando ci siamo detti, ma cosa succederebbe se uno nascesse in assenza di peso?
What would happen if somebody were born without weight?
E lì abbiamo iniziato a pensare, ho iniziato a pensare a tutta questa storia.
And from there, the story, they started to think about the story.
La prima cosa che ho visto è stato questo bambino che usciva dalla pancia pulito, perché è una specie di, non pensiate che sia blasfemo, però una specie di angelo, insomma, di Gesù che viene fuori, insomma, infatti non ha un padre.
And this is a question we had in class, in fact. This little boy comes out of the belly of his mom clean, because he's a little bit of an angel. We were speaking about angel or not angel in class, and a kind of miraculous birth, almost like Jesus.
Talking about reality, a lot of people ask to Marco, but why the baby is so clean and not, but the baby is flying, so it's not true that it's clean, it's flying. So okay.
Yeah, that's not the question, right?
Però Oscar non sono io, anche se ho molta passione per questi personaggi, appunto, che lottano ad armi impari contro la società, perché sono deboli.
So these characters are weak and they fight with uneven, not unequal weapons against society, because society is strong and they are little.
Però non smettono mai di sorprendersi, di essere curiosi. Questa secondo me è una grande... quelli che hanno questa possibilità in realtà sono molto fortunati in questa società.
But they never stop. Those who have this possibility are very lucky in this society.
Sono anche tutti personaggi che non hanno interesse per il denaro, se ci pensiamo, tutti quelli che ho raccontato.
All these characters don't care about money, for example.
Perché cercano una loro fede, che non deve essere per forza una fede religiosa, però deve essere un tentativo di trovare il loro posto nel mondo, che è una cosa che dovremmo fare tutti, me compreso.
And they have still faith, and it's not a religious faith, but it's faith in finding your place in the world. And this is something that touched a lot of our students too. I nostri studenti avevano notato questo fatto di essere diversi, to be different, but still have a perfect place for you, where if you are that different, you can wash the windows and in a skyscraper if you fly. It's a perfect ending, perfect. È un bellissimo finale quello di avere il supereroe che pulisce le finestre.
È bello perché in realtà è quasi inutile per il mondo, ma è utile per se stesso, almeno va a fare del bene a qualcuno, insomma.
E c'ha un posto nel mondo. He's at least doing something good for somebody, and he has a place in this world. I'm sorry that we have to go ahead with the next session. We're 32. Did Oscar go to work? Okay. Oh, Nicola has a question, but I want just to say, to conclude, by inviting you to Florida Atlantic University in the fall or in the spring. And when you come, since you are so much interested about flying, we have a personal pilot that works for us, Florida Atlantic University, and you can fly with him. Nicola takes all our guests to fly over South Florida. Quindi è un motivo in più per venire da noi a trovarci.
Thank you very much. Fantastic.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for everybody. It was really a beautiful session. So with so many questions, it's fantastic. Let's hope to have Anna and Marco with us really next year. And okay.
Now we're going to the next session. So yes. Marco and Anna, if you're tired, you can go to bed. If you want, you can stay longer. And then at the end, we have a breakout room, 5-10 minutes, where people may hand up.
Good morning from Rome.
Excuse me?
Anna was speaking, I think.
Anna, were you speaking?
No?
No, okay.
Okay. And so tonight, everybody should go to Netflix and watch L'Uomo Senza Qualità, if you didn't.
L'Uomo Senza Gravità, which was one of the questions, L'Uomo Senza Qualità. Was that?
Yes, L'Uomo Senza Gravità. I said Senza Qualità because I read one of the questions was very interesting by Seth Stein, if there is a connection with L'Uomo Senza Qualità, if you thought of that. Marco.
Musil, Robert Musil.
Sì. Did you think of that? You didn't
I
think
don't read it because it's a one.
Yes, indeed. But okay, anyway, there is not a connection between the titles. Okay, Ilaria, please.
Okay, so grazie mille Marco e Anna, arrivederci.
Grazie mille. Grazie.
Thank you. Bye.
Now we go.
Grazie mille.
Grazie a voi.
Ciao.
Grazie.
Ciao.
Okay, so we're going to go to the next session, where we are going to have the keynote conversation of Italians in Americas and beyond, with Anthony Tamburri and with Stanislao Pugliese. And here, let me take my biographies. Anthony Julian Tamburri, very important person for us because he was the Dean of Arts and Letters for many years here at FAU. And we're always happy to have him come back, even virtually. And in this case, also co-organize this conference with us. He's now the Dean of the John D. Calandra Italian American Institute and Distinguished Professor of European Languages and Literature. And his research lies in literature, cinema, semiotics, interpretation theories, cultural studies. He is the editor of more than 30 volumes and special issues of journals. I put here only a few. He has founded and directed summer programs in Italy. Among other awards, he was conferred the honor of Cavaliere dell'Ordine al Merito della Repubblica Italiana and was recognized for his service to the community by the Garibaldo Meucci Museum. He was vice president and president of the American Association of Teachers of Italian. And he's the executive producer and TV program host for Italics and a member of the founding directors of the internet portal iitaly.org. Thank you, Anthony, for being here. And I will also introduce the guest who is going to have a conversation with Anthony, which is Stan Pugliese, a professor of European history at the Queensborough Unico Distinguished Professor of Italian and Italian American Studies at Hofstra University, where he has directed the Italian American Experience Lecture Series for 25 years. Oh, you are an example. The author, editor, and translators of 25 books. He has been director and co-director of 6 international conferences and is the editor of the Italian and Italian American Studies series with Palgrave Macmillan. In the spring of 2020, he was slated to teach Italian American graduate studies at the University of Calabria as a Fulbright scholar. Congratulations, but the pandemic intervened. This is the dramatic ending of his brief bio. Thank you very much, Anthony and Stan, for being here with us. And I leave you the floor.
Okay. So we decided that we would touch on basically 4 topics, and we're open to observations, even I think we're open to observations even en passant. So if somebody really can't hold their question until the end, just raise your hand and Emanuele or whoever, Ilaria, will call on us. So Stan, do you have the first topic we had in mind?
Anthony, remind me what we're going to talk about, the crisis of Italian.
We were going to do Italian language.
Yeah.
We were going to do Italian language. We were going to do Italian American studies with Italian language. We were going to do Italian American publishers. We were going to do Italian American studies in the academy. And we were going to end up with philanthropy.
Okay. So let me begin very briefly. I am not in Italian. I'm not in the Romance language department. I'm in the history department. But for the 25 years that I've been at Hofstra, a large part of my responsibilities deals with advising students, many of whom are Italian American. And when I sit down with them and I look at their transcript, something always leaps out at me immediately, which is that they almost 90% of them are using Spanish to fulfill a foreign language requirement. When I ask them why, pointing out their last names, the answer is almost always the same, which is that they began with Spanish in middle school or high school or even elementary school and decided that the easiest thing would be to just simply continue with Spanish in college. It's a very rare student, at least at Hofstra, that I've encountered that has decided to switch from Spanish to Italian. You know, we've been talking about this crisis in the enrollments now for probably a generation, but as I say to my students, the etymology of the word crisis is from medicine. And in medicine, when a doctor says that a patient has reached a crisis, it means that things are going to change. Either the patient is going to make a turn for the better and be well, or that's it. So if a crisis, like, you know, in Italy, you know, in the governing crisis, it's been for 25 years, it's no longer a crisis. We have to find a new language to describe what's going on. And I'll give you a very, very brief personal anecdote. When my children came to the school district that we are at now, in a community where Italian Americans make up the second largest ethnic group, I just assumed, even before we moved here, that Italian would be offered in the schools. And in fact, it was not. It was only Spanish and French. When I made an appointment with the assistant superintendent for curriculum, who has an Italian last name, to ask that Italian be added to the curriculum, he argued that there was no demand for it, even though, you know, a large minority of the students in the community were actually Italian Americans. So this is the crisis, you know, in the long term that we've been dealing with.
So to continue, the crisis has been manifested in this at the university level, at least, with a 22% drop since around 2013. And we went, at one point, I think the highest we were was about 108 or 109,000. Now we're down to about 71,000 or 72,000, according to the figures of the Modern Language Association. I think we're still at around 90,000 K through 12. I think that's a good number. Or a good number. I think that's a pretty accurate number. One of the issues that Stan brought up, there are two sides of the coin of Italian American students studying and not studying, or who's studying Italian, right? Because we want the language not to be an ethnic language. We want it to be a cultural language. However, what Stan brings up is really important, because we at the Institute 10 years ago, and we're hoping to redo it again, we did a survey, K through 12. At that point, there were about 100,000 students. And it was there were a couple of things from that survey that were extremely interesting, extremely significant. We got 6,000 responses, which is really a lot when you consider we went out to potentially 100,000 people. 6% is a pretty good percentage for a response rate. Of those, there were two things. One, 59% of the students were Italian American who responded. 41% were not. Now, on the one hand, people might say that's not good, and it's true. It's not good according to what Stan is saying. There should be more Italian American studying. On the other hand, it is good, because 41% are not Italian, and they're taking Italian because they see Italian as a cultural language and not just as a heritage language. And that's a really important point to make with regard to Italian studies in general and Italian American studies in this country. The other issue, as Stan said, is, and we hear this, we've seen this in a couple of some of the literature, and I'm saying some of the creative writing, but we hear this a lot. When I was teaching full-time, before I was an administrator, and by the way, Ilaria, you promoted me. I was an associate dean at Florida Atlantic, not a dean, but thanks for the promotion. Thanks for the promotion. So since about 95, I've taught less and had more administrative roles, but I was always in the classroom. When I was in the classroom a lot and teaching the lower language, sometimes I would meet parents and they would say, why should my child study Italian? What are they going to do with Italian? And I would say, well, what do you want them to study? Well, study something like English or history or whatever. And I said, what are they going to do with English? What are they going to do with history? And so on and so forth, right? So there is, from within the community, a resistance to studying Italian. And that's one of our challenges. I was just on an hour and a half Zoom call today about this, and I'm going to be on another one tomorrow. We're trying to create a movement nationwide for trying to create a network where there could be more support and moral support, not just, you know, financial, but this type of moral support, changing. We're dealing, when I say moral support, I'm talking about changing the paradigm. There needs to be a paradigm shift among Italian Americans that they're Italian, their parents, if it was dialect, all the more, better still, that language is a valued language. And look, let's be honest, and we're preaching to the choir. Italian is the language of Dante Alighieri. Without Dante Alighieri and without Giovanni Boccaccio and without Francesco Petrarca, there's no humanism, there's no Renaissance, and there's no modernity the way we know it today. And yet, we seem to sell ourselves short. And so there really needs to be a paradigm shift. It's happening, I think, a little bit. I think the book that Stan co-edited with William Connell, the Storia degli Italo-Americani, the History of Italian Americans by Routledge, is part of it. Part of that is a signal that it's changing, a project I was involved in 2014, and is part of that because there are two projects that got private funding from the Italian American community to make sure that these books were produced. And in the case that I was involved in, it was private funding. That is individuals. One individual wrote a really big check. In Stan's case, and Stan will be able to speak to that more when we get to Italian American Studies, but it was Unico, the one of the, what I call one of the big three, Unico, Order Sons of Italy, and Naya. So, yeah. Okay. So Stan, you are, in fact, the whole the whole issue of language, and we wanted to talk about language not as teaching the language, but the whole politics behind the language, right? That it should be taught, that there needs to be more support from the community. Now there's a change going on in the Italian government now, which is going to be a little bit more difficult, but the Italian government has been generous in funding what's called an ente gestore, which means nothing, right? You know, an administrating entity. What does that mean? So an ente gestore, for those of you who don't know, is technically an American not-for-profit that's funded by the Italian government, and originally to have Italian taught in the years of what was the obligatory years of school. So it was basically elementary school. That's changed now, and the ente gestori can also contribute to junior high school and high school. And in the major cities areas, the ente gestore has done some really good things. I can speak volumes about the ente gestore in New York, but we also have to realize those of us in the greater New York metropolitan area or in the tri-state area have really the largest number of Italians, so our numbers are going to be higher. But you know, they've done great things in Chicago with the ente gestore in Chicago. So there's an ente gestore, I think, for every consulate district, every Italian consulate district in the United States. So you have one, or you should, I'm pretty sure you still have one in Miami.
Yes, we have the Audley, and Maria Rosa is also here from the consulate. Yeah. Yes.
So and here's the other thing. If we don't have good numbers of Italian students in junior high school and high school, we don't have good numbers in college. And that's still a challenge for professors of Italian at the university level. some of them, I think many of us do realize today that that's a necessity. There are still some who don't. And I know we're not supposed to criticize our own, but there are still some who don't. Stan, you were going to say something.
So yeah, just a comment on this problem of getting students to study Italian, and the idea of its utility. I'll give you an analogy in the discipline of history. We've had this discussion for many years in my department, like, how do you get students to be interested in, let's say, the Middle Ages or the Han Dynasty? Do you say that, well, things that you study about the Han Dynasty are relevant today, or things that you study about the Middle Ages are relative today? For example, you're sitting in a university, right? You're living under a capitalist regime. All of these things, they started, you're living in a nation state. All of these things started in the Middle Ages. You can make the, utilization argument, but how do you make the argument like, it's wonderful to study the Han Dynasty in and of itself. It's wonderful to study the Middle Ages in and of themselves. It's wonderful to study Italian in itself, just for its beauty, So that is a very hard argument to make to students. And I'm finding it's becoming increasingly difficult because of the situation that students find themselves in. They are pressed by forces, by parents, by the economy, by social media. The idea that you're going to study, 18th century, French poetry just because it's beautiful is a foreign concept to them.
Yeah, and that's that's a very great challenge. It's a very great challenge. But I think though, one of the things, I was talking to a couple of people today, and one of the people I was talking to who's involved in all of this is not a teacher, but he's actually a businessman. And he said, we just have to do what we do in business. We try to sell something to someone, they don't want it, forget about it. We go to another client, potential client, and so on and so forth. And I think, that's part of the issue. That's part of the paradigm shift, right? The fact that we have to do it, number one, and two, we have to be insistent. So language becomes an issue. It's part of the greater world of Italian America or Italian studies in the United States, and we need to make sure that we have to do our best, the best we can. And it's even more challenging now because COVID has become, in some ways, a pretext to make cuts where maybe the cuts don't have to be made. Now, I will say this: I'm really happy with what Queens College did during COVID, and that is, at a certain point, our vice president for finance, and we have an assistant vice president for finance as well. Our vice president for finance said that he was going to retire, and it happened just before COVID. And so, of course, people were talking about, oh, okay, well, we have to replace Bill, blah, 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 blah. COVID happened, and there was a great deal of rethinking that took place. And part of the rethinking was actually constructive. The rethinking was, well, you know what? Maybe we don't need to replace Bill because we have Joe. And Joe, as assistant vice president, can become the vice president, because after all, he's been doing that anyway, and so on and so forth. And so there was a rationale made that was very good, that was excellent. And so that salary, that funding can go elsewhere, and hopefully it'll go into teaching at the university at Queens. So
we have Anthony, there are some comments, in fact, about this in the chat. First, I was asking what our students think about learning Italian and if they had to challenge their parents about it. And Kylie says, I learn Italian because the language is the love of my life, and my parents didn't mind my major change. But Linda says one other problem is the cost of a 4-year university, where they probably need to choose very pointedly on what they want. And then we have Tony Phillips that says Pampano Beach has 11 98% Italians, almost no classes in Italian. One example that comes from us. And
Yeah.
he personally, he is very active in our community. And thank you, Tony. He is planning to meet the school superintendent and the mayor. And this was put on hold last year due to COVID. So again, like you were saying, and then Audra has some thoughts. Do you want to unmute, Audra, about this?
Yes. So, Professor Tamburri, ciao. I was listening to the part where you said, you're questioning some students about, what's the difference between English and Italian. And I've been studying Italian for 6 years now. My mom is Italian, but she doesn't know the language. And I had both options of, going to media communications and film, which is one of my majors, or continuing with Italian. I did both. And everyone would always ask me, what are you going to do with that? What are you going to do with that? And I'm like, well, what do English people do? What do people in history do? I mean, Italian is just like any other language. I see it as just a way of opening doors. I mean, you can do so much with it. It just depends on what your passion is. Like, for example, I am continuing my studies as a PhD candidate at the Ohio State University in autumn, and it will be in Italian. And it's, as you said, paradigm shift. I think using the interdisciplinary approach and, selling that to students, I think is a better way than just to see it as, okay, it's just another language. It can open so many doors. It just depends on what your passion is. Like for me, it's history and film, and I can incorporate all three things and make a life out of that because that's my passion.
Right. Okay. And here's the thing, I was saying, you were talking, you said Italian and then film. I mean, and so I had this sort of battuta, like, of course, because Italian cinema is the best cinema in the 20th century. I mean, we know that, right? I mean, I say that a bit with tongue in cheek, but I say that also seriously. I mean, Italian cinema now, some people want to say French. All right, French. I'll give you French cinema being one of the best, but Italian cinema is also one of the best. I mean, when you look at what came out of Italy, and even though it was officialdom, it was the official culture. Even films made during the fascist era have a certain quality to them, I think, that stand out. If anything, technically, forget about the thematics of it. So that's one. And then you say history in Italy, history in Italian. Again, if you don't know it, I mean, the other thing is Italian can be both the vehicle or it could be the end game, right? So it could be Italian / literature, Italian literature, right? Or it could be Italian language and literature that you study, but then you also bring it to something like history, you bring it to something like film, you bring it to whatever. Stan speaks Italian. Stan couldn't do the work he does if he didn't speak Italian, right? But yet there are people who think they can. And so that yeah. You want to jump in on this, Stan?
I'm thinking back 2 hours ago when Ilaria opened up the conference and said, when the pandemic gives us lemons, we make limoncello. Two very concrete examples of this. On Tuesday, this Italian American lecture series that I've been doing for 25 years is more or less constrained because we are, Hofstra is not the same as the Calandra Institute or Columbia University or the Casa Italiana at NYU. We are very limited. So I'm forced to ask people from the tri-state area to come to campus. On Tuesday, for the first time in 25 years, we had Bill Papaleo, who's an Italian-American painter who left America, went to Italy in 1985, and he's been painting there for the last 35 years. And we had him on Zoom, which was extraordinary. I would never have been able to have something like that. The same time, the dean at Hofstra College, who is a Russian specialist, Russian literature and film, managed to create a course at Hofstra on Zoom with a course at Moscow State University, students at Moscow State University. And I was like, wow, you know, if we can, he figured out the time zone difference. I can figure out the time zone difference with Italy, and we can make that happen. So yes, you know, Audrey, you said, you know, this paradigm shift, it's on us, right? It's on us that we have to be creative and come up with these, I mean, we are forced to do these things that actually in the end turned out to be quite rewarding and very fertile.
And other two students would like to say, Angela and Kali, do you want to unmute?
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, yeah, I'm currently Italian major. I switched from education because education didn't suit me at all. And I was already studying Italian before. My plan is to become a Italian English translator in an NGO. However, it kind of makes me saddened that for graduate school, I would have to do international relations as my focus. I love it, but I love Italian even more. And if I could, I would just, you know, stay with Italian completely. But for what I want to do, I don't really have that option.
Okay, can
Well, go ahead, Stan. Go ahead.
Just very briefly, because this is mirrors very much my situation. When I went to graduate school, you know, I was admitted to a couple of very good graduate schools, but with no money. And there was no way that I could go to my first, my second, or even my third choice. I ended up going to the CUNY graduate school because they gave me this wonderful fellowship, but there was no Italian historian there. And so I had to arrangiarsi, you know, figure things out, you know, and I improvise. And as I like to say, improvisation is the art of the poor. So every course that I took, if I took a course on French history, I did a paper on Italian anarchists in Paris, you know, so I cheated as much as I could. I got people on my dissertation committee who were from other campuses of the city university system, and you make it happen. And that's what you have to do.
So let's use that comment there to switch to Italian American Studies in the Academy, because
Can we have Angela say something? I think she wants to say something about language,
okay.
And then we'll go to the other.
Yeah, no, just for me, Italian, I started out as like a chemistry major and a neuroscience. And then I ended up I'm a sociology major with an Italian minor now. But yeah, for me, the biggest battle with like becoming an Italian minor was facing criticism. People were like, oh, you can't make money off of that. And I'm like, well, I have a whole department of people who are making money off of it. So yeah, that's just what I wanted to share.
Okay. I guess we need to think of the university on two levels: vocation and avocation. And I'm of a different generation. When I went to college, it was avocation, in a sense that you basically studied the emphasis on the practicality was not as strong when I went. Although I will tell you this, my grandfather used to say to me, you go to college, you go to work with a tie on. And so the tie became that sort of semiotics of success, right? You go to college, you go to work with a tie on. You get a better job. You're not a construction worker, you're not a plumber, you're not a whatever. There's nothing wrong with those professions, but back then, that was sort of the thinking. So let's stay and talk about curriculum, whether it's Italian or Italian American Studies, right? Because you just said when you went to the CUNY Grad Center, there was no Italian in his, right? And they had an Italian for a while only because he was hired through the Calandra Institute, Phil Canestraro, the late Phil Canestraro.
Right. So Anthony and I, we were discussing this a few days ago. At the same time that we are facing this kind of crisis, or whatever you want to call it, in Italian language, there's a kind of paradox going on in the sense that we are in a kind of, almost a kind of golden age of Italian and Italian American studies. You know, Anthony made reference to Unico, who founded my distinguished professorship at Hofstra, and a half a dozen others around the country. There are programs, either minors or majors in Italian studies in, dozens of universities around the country. Just one student today in my Italian American history class decided she's going to be an Italian studies minor. So we have this kind of paradox, same thing that's going on in Italian American publishing that we'll talk about in a few moments as well.
Yeah, and Fred Gardafe, who is our distinguished professor in English and Italian American Studies, so basically literature is his field, and Fred has been doing this for a long time. Fred, I get a few, but Fred gets a lot of requests from people around the country, and sometimes even from places like Italy, if not Northern Italy, Northern Europe, where people want to do Italian American studies and they want to come to the United States and study, and they think they can come and study with Fred. But unfortunately, while there are some Italian American studies programs at the graduate level, there are very, very few. And administrations, those who are not familiar with the whole terrain and really are in ethnic studies people are sometimes the ones who are the gatekeepers. They're the Cerberuses at the gate. And so it really is a challenge to convince them, well, first of all, to make them understand in general what you want to do, and second, to then convince them to move forward. We were lucky at Queen's because we put up 4 MA courses as soon as we hired Fred Gardafe, and because the Calandra Institute is affiliated with Queen's College, which is part of CUNY. And so we have 4 courses that are basically literature, film, and interethnic relations and literature that we've done. But over the years, though, we've done some other stuff, and we got a little bit creative. And what we did was we created a course called Italian and Italian American Modernism. It's a literature course, and we read for the first, let's say, 4 or 5 weeks. Maybe a third of the course, we read Italian writers who were writing in one way, shape, or form about migration. Believe it or not, there are writers at the end of the 19th and beginning of the 20th century who wrote about migration, and also who were maybe, we could call them modernists as far as their narrative was concerned. And then we moved into Italian American studies. And so we did that as an Italian American, as a special topics course. Fred then last year offered it as a graduate course in the English department, and he got 12 students. And 12 students for a graduate course is a lot of students, right? And he got 12 students, 12 MA students in English who took that course, and it was a really good course. I wanted to, somebody mentioned about translating, et cetera. There is a program, there are some MFA programs that, and there are some MA programs in translation. There's a brand new one going up at the Graduate Center at CUNY, at the in translation studies. It's brand new though, it's not up yet. I think they're gonna launch it next year. But there is a program, there is a component in translation in the MFA program at Queen's College that I found out about only after about 3 or 4 years being here. Their MFA program is MFA in creative writing and translation. And so a student can actually do a translation as a thesis, for example, a thesis project. So there are some of those. You have to look for them, but they're out there. They're out there.
Well, can I say, we have last fall, it was a coincidence, but last fall we had Italian American cinema as undergraduate, and this spring we have Italian American translating identities as graduate. So this year we do have a whole year of Italian American studies at FAU. I have some of the students here. Audra is one of them.
Yeah.
So we're trying.
And it doesn't have to be, the other thing is, it doesn't have to be just Italian American, right? So for example, the course that I teach occasionally on Italian American cinema, I call it Italian American cinema production and representation, right? Because I usually include at least 2 films, if not 3, that are not by Italian Americans, but in one way, shape, or form, right? Of course, one being Spike Lee with his either Do the Right Thing or Jungle Fever, right? So these courses can also be interethnic, intercultural, whatever we want to call it. Same thing in literature, the same thing. We can have an intercultural whatever in history and so on and so forth. And so it's really a question of making limoncello out of lemonade. I mean, making limoncello out of lemons. It's the idea of making lemonade out of lemons and being a little bit more creative. That creativity, that sense of creativity, and Miriam, seeing how you and I have been around in Italian studies for a while, that sense of creativity is fairly new in Italian studies. We still, we still talk in terms of Italian studies about le tre corone, whether it's Dante, Petrarca, and Boccaccio, or whether it's Carducci, Pascoli, and D'Annunzio. We have these tre corone always, and so to break away is really, it's challenging. It's very challenging, and very few, I must say, to the chagrin, I say to the chagrin of myself, very few graduate programs in Italian studies have an Italian American component. And formally, I can only think of one, and that's NYU, because they have the Tiro Assegno. Tiro Assegno is an old club that dates back to 1898 or something like that. It was a shooting gallery, Tiro Assegno. And over the years, it's become a private Italian American club that costs a pretty penny to join. You have to be invited, et cetera, et cetera. But they gave NYU a $500,000 endowment that has since grown and has created this professorship every other year. They have the Tito Assegno professor who teaches both an undergraduate and a graduate course. And then when that person's not there, they have a professor of English, Josephine Gattuso-Hendon, who usually does a course on Italian American studies. So it's the only place that I know, and Stan, I don't know if you know of any other place, but where at the graduate school level, there is actually a formal, part of the curriculum can be Italian American.
There's a comment here from Domenica about this, the Italian American Studies course. And Domenica had another comment before. Do you want to put them together?
Sure, thank you. Well, my most recent comment was just how the Translating Identities course completely changed my life, because until I took that, I didn't realize there was even a place in academia for me. Like I felt like I was not enough when I was in Italy because I was the American, and I was not enough here, so I really never found my niche academically speaking. So here we are in the PhD program because of that course. So that was that. But also as an educator, an adjunct professor at Broward College, I see with the pathway model that students are being discouraged from taking Italian because the advisors are just looking backwards. They're looking at the career and then saying, these are the only courses that fulfill these requirements. And therefore, I can't count how many times students come and say, I can't take your class because, and it's because of one of those limitations. However, Italian, they always offer at least one Italian session because performing arts students are required to take Italian as their language. So there you go. I'll have a class of 7 students because, the others couldn't take it due to the pathway limitations. But this year we fought good and hard, really, really hard to get it reinstated as a gen ed course. And so now the 1000 level Italians are gen ed again, and yay. But it was a tough fight. And just in closing, I'll say that the thing that I really think sealed the deal was expressing it as a link to cultural competence, to make it an interdisciplinary argument based on cultural competencies. Yeah.
Could I make a comment on this idea of translating identities? Most of you know this already. We are also in a kind of golden age of Italian American memoirs, because of the work of people like Eddie Giunta in New Jersey and others. It's only been in the last, I would say, 10, 15 years that, the Italian American memoir has been recognized by American publishers. So that's very important. On the other side of the ocean in Italy, some of you might not know this, but I mean, this struck me when I was a graduate student, 30 years ago, speaking with Italian historians, that, I sensed immediatly that, there was no interest in Italian American history or in Italian Americans in general. We consider myself Italian American, even though I have dual citizenship, the cugini cafone. There was no history there. There was nothing to be learned, and it was only because of people like Francesco Durante, the late Francesco Durante, Italo-Americana, or Martino Marazzi, or Maddalena Tirabassi with Altre Italia, these institutions that are now formally recognized and established, Maddalena in Torino and other places. So yeah, we are we are in an extraordinary moment in Italian American studies.
Yeah, that's true, and there is more interest, at least from the humanities point of view, literature, cinema, and also history. I think it would be good if the sociologists got behind it to some degree. But what Stan is saying is correct. In Italy, we are the sort of cugini cafoni. But it's changing to some degree. I think it's changing. We've noticed that we being the Calandra Institute, almost 10 years ago, 8 years ago, were able to hold a seminar at the Rockefeller Center in Bellagio, which we invited 9 scholars from the United States who were involved in Italian American studies, and 9 scholars from Italy who were involved. And it was really the beginning of I think a network. We call it the Italian American Studies Network, we called it. And from there, other things happened. And things are happening in Italy now that weren't happening. One example being that when there was a project I was working on, and I was going through some American Studies journals, and the American Studies journal was a journal called Acoma, and they did an issue, and they did an issue on Le Americhe che leggiamo, and it was an ethnic studies issue, and it looked like an affirmative action project. It was African Americans, Native Americans, Latinos, and the fourth one, whatever, Native Americans, right? So they said in their introduction, the editors, that this is ethnic America. Yeah. Oh yeah, by the way, there are also Jews who are and are not part of the ethnic landscape, right? And there was not one mention of Italian Americans. And I was just shocked. This is Italy, a country that allowed 30 million people to leave from the 1880s to 1976. And yet the Italian establishment, literary establishment, cultural establishment, does not pay attention to any of that. So it was a real eye-opener to me. I had all the experiences that Stan was saying about the cugini americani, whatever. I've been in company where people talk bad about Americans and Italian Americans, and somebody would say, raise their hand and say, ma Anthony, lui è americano. And they would say this, sì, ma lui è diverso. And if you're old enough to remember, in the 60s, when we would say, and they talk down about African Americans. Like, yeah, but he's different. Our friend was always different, right? So that's changing, which is good, but it's still there. It's still there, and it's there also in the sense of Italian writing. Think about Italian writing. The Italians, and when I say the Italians, I'm talking about that literary establishment that has its fingers on the power buttons, right? They don't recognize Italian writing really beyond the borders of Italy. They're not part of the paradigms that they create, the cultural paradigms that they create, in spite of the fact that these writers publish in Italy and published with good, very good publishing houses. And so you have to sort of scratch your head and wonder, it's only advantageous to recognize those other writers. It makes, it gives more currency, let's say, to Italian culture in general. And that's a problem. Stan, I don't know about in history how difficult that is, that Italy-America thing, you know, intellectually. But
even more so.
I think I can see that. There is a question from Augusta University. So since it's so unusual to have Georgia, New York, Florida connected, I'll let Jada take your give her question, and she needs advice.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm trying to turn on my camera and see if it works. Okay, it's a little dark in here, so I apologize for that. So yeah, my question is mostly related to how to convince administration that adding another language to a language department is a plus, because I've been trying to do that at Augusta University. I teach Spanish, but I would like to be able to offer at least 2 beginner courses in Italian. And we administered a survey. There's a lot of interest in Italian, and a lot of people always say it's a great idea, but then what worries the administration is taking away, if we add Italian, it will take away from other low enrollment classes or languages like French, for example. So I haven't been able to really do anything about it or convince anyone. I don't know if you have any suggestions on, is there a magic trick, a magic formula on how to convince administration? Because sometimes it's not about students not being interested in studying, but it's coming from administration that does not give permission to add a language. So any thoughts on that would be great. Thank you.
Okay, so first of all, this is the first time I've ever heard you speak English. That's a private joke among us from Florida. No, ma ti conosco solo in italiano.
È vero.
It's funny. No, you know what? You need to get faculty support from other programs.
Right.
That's probably the first thing to do, is to get faculty support from other programs. So you go to history, you go to, you know, you have to sort of find that. I don't know, do you have a classics department by any chance? You know,
no, we don't, but we have established a partnership. I mean, we have with art. They actually have a study abroad program that goes to Italy. And also we have a cinema series. We have film studies. So there is a way to connect. There's a lot. I actually worked with the music department too, as an Italian coach in the opera. So there are a lot of connections, but yet for some reason, I haven't been able to break that wall.
Well, but the commitment would be, you have to try to get a commitment,
right,
quote unquote, from those profs to say, for example, in music, yes, you should know Italian, blah, blah, blah. You should at least have 1 year of Italian, right?
Yes,
and if you can get them, because that's all you really want right now, right? You need the first year. So if you can get them to support the idea of a first year sequence, 2 semester sequence in Italian, and that, you know, our 10 students who come in every year in opera and singing and whatever, vocal, you know, whatever, and the same thing with the other disciplines, then you know, you might have some success. Then you go out and you look for someone to sponsor it, in the sense that, you know, it may be a 1 semester, maybe a 1 year commitment on the part of the person, but then you cook up a deal with the administration, right? So that you get someone to sponsor 2 courses, let's say so that, let's say you're going to teach the course, so then that person buys out your Spanish course, right? You get an adjunct to teach your Spanish course or whatever, and that's one way to do it. And of course, the person who is going to sponsor it says, well, if we have good enrollment, it should continue, right? The department's going to pick it up, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's really that simple, quote unquote, in the sense of you make a deal, you know, but you have to get the support of the other faculty. First and foremost, the support of the other faculty. That's been my experience. Stan, I don't know about you.
No, I don't have.
Can I add a couple of things?
Marion's the queen of creative program.
No, I would like to just add I have a couple of really very concrete suggestions. Summers ago, I gave a talk in April for the Canadian Association of Italian Studies, and I titled it Moncello from Lemons, Strategies for Successful Italian Program Building or something.
Miriam, can you try speaking closer to the microphone because the voice comes and goes?
Okay, no, so a couple of concrete suggestions to also guarantee the support those people and those faculty members in your department that you can see joining forces with you. And I think you have to make the case that you are not creating another little bubble. You are creating something that is part of something much larger. Your department needs to look as itself as an essential force inside under the larger umbrella of the humanities, because ultimately this is why we are teaching a foreign language. We are not teaching a foreign language so we can order our pizzas in Italian, right? But I think it's really essential that you look for potential conversation partners. The other thing that I would recommend is that you seek the support of the community, because look how much we can do thanks to the community. We have members from the community right here among us. We have created a synergy here that we live in symbiosis with them. And that is such a beautiful, special thing that they can provide $5,000 for your program and say, please go to your dean and tell your dean that we're willing to pay $5,000 the first year for one class in Italian studies. We'll ask for 10, I don't know. But they will be willing, that's why they exist. They really want to help because they look at us as these, as the vehicles for taking their culture and their values further. So I really think that you have a lot to go for you. There's nobody from Ujipolo here, I don't know if there is, but Ujipolo, we started with $5,000 from Ujipolo. You know, 2,500 one semester, 2,500 next semester. After, after that, the first class, I could take almost the entire class to the second level. And almost the entire second level, I had 17, 18 students left in intermediate go figure. So it was fantastic. And it was also because the community was so supportive and because the administration was very supportive too. And also because the program was not set up as a bubble. I have to say I at the time, because Anthony wasn't there yet, I looked at what existed in the college. Well, they had a certificate in classics. So I approached them and said, sorry, we don't offer Latin, we don't offer Greek. I really think that we should make Italian as part of, so the language requirement for somebody in classics should be Italian. Mm-hmm. Ethnic studies, film studies. I designed courses in function in English, which was not something I could easily convince my colleagues of. But it's important to teach certain courses in English with really attractive titles that attract people from other disciplines. It's so important. And you show that way that you don't think of Italian studies as really just this monorail that goes to your metaphorical city.
Interconnectedness.
It's really interconnectedness, and this multidisciplinary idea has to, I think, inform everything you do. This interdisciplinarity, I think, has to inform your decisions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I think we touched only 2 of your 4 topics, Anthony and Stanislao. We have a minute left.
We should talk a little bit about publication.
Do a conclusion. Yes, the conclusion for this.
Yeah, because without publication, because with publication we have visibility. Stan, you want to?
Right. So even here, there's a kind of golden age of publishing we find ourselves in. There's at least a half a dozen publishing houses that have collana devoted to Italian and or Italian American studies. So there's one at Fordham that focuses on Italian American. There's the SUNY Press under Fred Gardefei with specialization in Italian American studies. There's a new one now on modern Italian history with Routledge. Anthony has the Bordighera Press, and Fairleigh Dickinson University Press also has a specialization in Italian studies. And there is the one that I do with Palgrave Macmillan, which I'm proud to say was like one of the first, unless Anthony beat me with Fairleigh Dickinson University Press. But
no, you were before, as far as, yeah, you were, they created, in 2007, I think we created the Italian series.
Okay.
You were before that.
But we have about 85 volumes now.
Yeah, exactly.
For better or worse, they're mostly in Italian studies, less so in Italian American, but really extraordinary. And then there are, you know, in addition to, let's say, the biggies like, you know, Norton's and Harper and, you know, trade publishers that publish Italian stuff, there are smaller presses like Guernica that publishes outstanding stuff. And related to them are Italian American bookstores. One of my favorite is the one in the North End of Boston. Here on Long Island, there's Cagno's Bookstore, which is about 30 years old now, in Sag Harbor. So, you know, when the Italian American Writers Association was founded 30 years ago, you know, their three diktats were, you know, buy our books, read our books, and write or be written. Now, there's no excuse now. In fact, if anything, it's difficult to keep up with my Italian stuff and with the Italian American stuff. So really, it's a kind of almost an embarrassment of riches. Although, when you walk into a bookstore, a brick and mortar bookstore, you still do not see sections on Italian American literature.
Right. And we've complained, we've complained, you know, to bookstores, well, you know, especially Barnes and Noble up until a year and a half ago was under the ownership of an Italian American. He bought it back in '71 and created the Barnes and Noble we know today. And we've said, you know, one bookshelf, 36 inches of books. That's all we want, 36 inches of books, and you can have them on consignment and so on and so forth. So there is still that challenge. But you're right, there's an embarrassment of riches, and in addition to what you said, and then there's the University of California that will publish 1 or 2 books, and then there's University, whatever, Cornell University Press, and so on and so forth. So and that helps. That's ammunition to create programs also, because it shows that there's an intellectual discourse going on. Yeah.
Anthony, I'm wondering, you know, Fred Gardefei made this comment again when we were talking with Bill Papaleo a few days ago. I'm wondering if the reason why bookstores do not have Italian American sections is because, as Fred has been saying for years now, that as Italian Americans, we have erased ourselves as an ethnicity, right?
Yeah.
We've become so obsessed with becoming white into the mainstream that we've erased ourselves, and the bookstores say they don't recognize us that way.
Right. That's a really important point, because because then we have this paradox where we don't study the culture, we don't read about it, so we don't buy the books, so the books remain on the bookshelf. Yet we become strident defenders of Christopher Columbus, and we don't realize, you know, what I'm neutral on Columbus. I mean, for me, he could stay, he could go, whatever. If the statue's really done well, let's keep it. I like the one in Columbus Circle. It's a really interesting statue. Plus, I was able to see it up front when they did. Some of you may not know, but a number of years ago now, over a decade ago, when they had to redo the statue, they had to put scaffolding, whatever. So they made a living room around the statue. So they allowed the public to go in, and you can actually go in. I don't know if you got a chance to go, Stan, but I did. It was just sitting there, and the wallpaper was all Americana. It was really interesting. So that's it. That's the problem. We have erased ourselves. On the other hand, we want to have the Sunday dinner at 2 o'clock, and we want to have the spaghetti meatballs, and we want to defend Columbus, but we don't know anything about Garibaldi. And that's a major issue.
Yeah. Can I make a provocative statement? Just a kind of charge for us to think about in this whole debate about Christopher Columbus while that was going on in New York City. There was a church on Sacman Avenue in Brooklyn, Our Lady of Loretto Church, which was built in 1906. On the front cover, Architecture magazine in 1908. While the Italian American community in New York was obsessing with Christopher Columbus in the last few years, that extraordinary church was sold by the Diocese of Brooklyn and demolished to make way for real estate condominiums. And my argument at the time was that if Italian Americans really wanted a monument to Italian American culture, that neo-Renaissance church on Sacman Avenue in Bed-Stuy, Brooklyn, would have been a more appropriate monument to keep around than the statue of Columbus. And a further thing, in the debate about Christopher Columbus, have you noticed that no other ethnic groups have come to our defense or to the defense, not so much of Christopher Columbus himself, because I don't think he can be defended, but of Italian Americans? And probably because the big three that Anthony mentioned, NIAF, the Sons of Italy, and Unico, they rarely raise their voice or their collective voices in issues or matters of social or racial justice. So if we don't speak out on behalf of other people, why would we expect other people to speak out on our defense or even come to our side or even consider our arguments, in this case, for Christopher Columbus, which, like Anthony, I can take him or leave him. So.
There is one more comment, I think, from Isabella. I'm curious to know what she wants to say about Colombo.
This one isn't so much about Columbus, but going based off of what Dr. Tampuri was mentioning about how with the stigma historically of being Italian and coming to America and maybe not wanting that to be so obvious or so in the open, do you think that maybe one of the reasons why the inscription or registration levels are lowering now is just the fact that it's so many generations have passed that maybe now it's having a toll that the grandparents didn't talk to the parents and the parents didn't talk to the children, and now suddenly the children are in college, and maybe that's having an effect on why the numbers are so low currently?
I think that's part of it, but I think we live in a paradox. Stan used that word a couple of times, and I think he's correct. We live in a paradox where, just again, right or wrong about Columbus, there's this stridency to defend Columbus. Yet there are other things. The Lady of Loretto Church that Stan mentioned was a work of art. It was architecturally a work of art. It had wonderful stained glass windows, and it had frescoes in it, I think, Stan, if I'm not mistaken. Now, the windows were taken out. The church at least knew enough to take out the windows and put them in storage, whatever they're going to do with them, who knows? But they're works of art. I think that's it. At the Calandra Institute, we've got 2 or 3 opinions, right? Fred Gardafe says, they don't know what they don't know. And instead, my colleague Joseph Shore says, no, they know what they know. They just don't want to let loose that they know what they know. So we have this argument going on. But I do think it is a question of knowledge. They don't know what they know, or recognition. They know what they know, but they just don't want to. The thing is, if you know the history of Italians in America, then there's a lot to be proud of. Before mass immigration, there were signers of the Declaration of Independence who were Italian. It's proverbial, right? It's sort of cliche-ish. Filippo Mezzei gave Thomas Jefferson the, all men are created equal phrase, and so on and so forth, right? The first professor of modern languages was Carlo Bellini, French and Italian. He was a friend of Thomas Jefferson. Thomas Jefferson had this wonderful library of Italian stuff. I mean, Italy was very important in certain ways, right? But then there was mass immigration and language. We were talking language before about Italian ethnic language. Up until immigration, Italian was a cultural language. It was a language of culture. There were numerous translations of the Divine Comedy in the 19th century that were taken into English, right? And then, of course, things changed with mass immigration. There's and Stan knows this very well because he studied this. There's this false notion of the history of Italians in America that they were all illiterate, right? They weren't all illiterate. We know that. We know that, first of all, they weren't all from the South. Around 1915, the population was more or less 50-50. So that's what, there was a large Veneto from the northeast population. Yes, there was a large illiteracy rate among the Southern Italians who came, but there was a large illiteracy rate. There was a publishing house on every corner in the late 19th century and early 20th century. There was writing going on, publications. In the 20s and 30s, there was a whole anti-fascist movement that was going on. There were publications left and right, both in English and both in Italian. There's this publication called The Atlantic. I don't know, Stan, if you ever came across it. This publication called The Atlantic. And we only have a few issues here and there. But people like LaGuardia published in it, you know, Fiorello LaGuardia. I mean, there were really people like Edward Corsi, who was the immigration commissioner at the time. So all of that history we don't know. Mm-hmm. And the only history we seem to know, I mean, I would say we don't know, on a popular level, is what you're referring to. The history of the poor, the history of la miseria, as they called it. And so, you know, people wanted, I mentioned what my grandfather said to me. He could read and write. So when he came here, he was able to learn English. He got a job as a sort of, I don't know, janitor or whatever. And he worked his way up to being a mid-level functionary in Consolidated Edison. And he went to work with a tie on. And that was for him the semiotic of it all, right? He made it because he went to work with a white shirt and a tie. There were no colored shirts back then, only white shirts and a tie. So we don't know that history as much as we know the woe is me history, the woe are we, right? Oh, poveri noi, look, we were poor and we were blah, blah, blah. It's true, times were discriminated against. And we need to know that, and we need to make sure that people know that, whatever. But we also need to know that there was a culture here, an Italian, quote unquote, culture in both Italian and in English that was going on. And Stan mentioned Francesco Durante and his two books, Italo-Americana, are two treasure troves of what was going on in this country, and for the most part, writing in Italian. Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Ilaria might be trying to, yes, but I just want to make one second comment on what Anthony said. In addition to the fact that we now know that, you know, a lot of these immigrants were not illiterate, there's the political analogy too. It used to be thought that these immigrants came here politically tabula rasa, right? But read Francesco's excerpts, and you know that these millions of peasants came to America with an experience either in Catholic organizations, agrarian leagues, the Socialist Party, the anarchists, very politicized, even though, as I tell my students, Sacco and Vanzetti became anarchists in America because of America. Anyway, basta.
Thank you, Stan. Thank you, Anthony. And there is one comment by Linda. Those who have forgotten are working now to remember. So we close with this wish to remember what we have forgotten. And thank you very much. So this session has finished a little late. So we are eating away the reception, but we still have time to hear your song, Barbara, because it has to do with the pride of being Italian and our language and our history, and one of the tre corone, of the three crowns. So Barbara has composed and is offering to all the Italian consulate offices this Tanto Gentile, Tanto Onesta Pare, and she has recorded it with the tenor Carlos De Antonis. So I think you want to share the screen, right, Barbara?
Sì. Buonasera a tutti innanzitutto. Thank you so much for your beautiful presentations. I really enjoyed being here and listening to all your, this beautiful symposium with all your presence, and you really enrich the Italian culture and the Italian heritage through all the things that you are working for your students and also for the teachers, and sharing all your knowledge. Okay, I just wanted to say one thing, that this year is the famous L'anno di Dante, and I had the idea to put the music in one of the sonnets that I really like the most by Dante Alighieri. And I was thinking about dedicating this sonnet to Miriam Ruthenberg, because in my heart, Miriam, you mean a lot to me, and you'll mean a lot to all the South Floridians who have been learning Italian here in Boca Raton.
Thank you, that is very kind, but let's not forget who are the brains behind this beautiful symposium. My colleagues, Ilaria, Emanuele.
Exactly.
We are a triumvirate.
Yes, I know, and thanks to Ilaria Emanuele.
I share it with all of you.
Yes, I know, but thanks to Ilaria Emanuele, we are about to do a beautiful concert in honor of Miriam Ruthenberg, and it's going to happen on...
And I'm not even dead yet.
No, but this concert is just to, it's appreciation, and it's to show your love, and and we really appreciate all your commitment and everything you have done for us and for the Floridian community. And
I will continue to do, because I cannot just fold my books and take off. So I'll be helping out whatever you need. You can always count on me.
And since you're my inspiration and you're present tonight, I dedicate this. By the way, today è la prima mondiale. So from today, you will find it everywhere in all the most famous platforms like YouTube or Amazon Music or whatever. I mean, it's everywhere. So let me share the screen. Wait, it's disabled. Can you give it to me, please? Thank you. All right, okay. And this morning I presented already, and Pietro Porcella was presenting the video, so I'm using the same one, but of course you will not see him presenting in the actual official video. But I left it because it was a special day today that we had this presentation for Fati, la Federazione degli Insegnanti di Italiano. And so I'm really thankful to Pietro for letting me do my presentation about how important is the music for learning and teaching Italian to the younger generations. So I hope you like it. Let me know, okay?
Nell'anno di Dante, da un sonetto di Dante Alighieri, tanto gentile e tanto onesto a fare, con le musiche della grande compositrice Barbara Salani e la voce del tenore Carlos De Antoni, tanto gentile e tanto onesta a fare. Tanto gentile
Grazie.
Grazie, ma che gentile.
Ciao Miriam.
A Miriam.
Grazie.
Bellissimo. So, thank you, Barbara, our composer and future PhD students. We think in our program, the program that Anthony directed for a few years. So it's growing, it's going on, Anthony.
Grazie Ilaria, grazie per l'opportunità, grazie a tutti voi, è stato bellissimo ascoltarvi e stare qui con voi stasera, grazie mille.
Ok, grazie Barbara, veramente davvero molto,
grazie
molto
Miriam.
speciale.
Vi voglio bene a tutti.
Voglio bene anche a te.
Grazie. Allora, buona serata, ci vediamo domani.
We conclude with this. Thank you so much for this virtual reception music, and Anthony, Stan, thank you so much for your contribution. Okay. Everybody who participated.
Thank you everybody.
Tomorrow 8:30.
Ci vediamo domani. Ciao, buonasera.
Isabella, grazie, ciao. Patrizia, thank you for staying. Giada, Audra, Amy, thank you for your comment.
Amy, thank you. Thank you, Seth. Thank you, Adrienne. Signora Brock is always there. Thank you.
Adriana.
Mr. Joseph Salvia.
Yes, it's me.
Ciao a tutti. Ciao Ruth, grazie. Ciao. Ciao Ruth. Patrizia, I hope you're feeling better.
Ciao, sì.
Ciao Antonio. Ciao.
Ciao Ilaria, ciao a tutti. Ciao.
Ciao Antonio.
Sì,
ciao. A domani.
Ciao.
Ciao Calli, ciao, grazie. Ciao.